It's noon on the West Coast, 3 o'clock in D.C., where Senate Democrats are now calling for the Attorney General Jeff Sessions to explain himself, after two advisors appeared to contradict him about the campaign's connections to Russia. And while we learned that one of those advisors is still apparently cooperating with the special counsel, Robert Mueller. The Attorney General also catching new criticism from his boss, President Trump, saying he does not know about Sessions' future if the Justice Department doesn't investigate accusations that Hillary Clinton rigged the primary system. The president says that's the real story on collusion. We'll look at the facts. As all this goes down here in the United States, the president is headed to Asia, with North Korea's nuclear program sitting atop a packed agenda. The key concerns and what the White House may want to accomplish. And a judge rules no prison time for the...
Now, Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News Deck.
And first from the Fox News Deck this Friday afternoon, the Attorney General Jeff Sessions facing new questions over members of the Trump campaign, their connections to the Russians, and his failure to mention them. Senate Democrats saying they want the Attorney General back in the hot seat to answer questions on the record about a pair of former campaign advisors. One of those advisors, George Papadopoulos, the man who's admitted that he lied to the feds about his contacts with the Russians during the presidential campaign. According to court documents from the special counsel's office, Papadopoulos, who's circled here, suggested during this meeting last March that he could use his Russian connections to arrange a get-together with Putin and then candidate Trump. A source tells Fox News Sessions, who was still a senator at the time, immediately rejected it and moved on to other issues. So far, no comment from Justice. As for President Trump, he was the one who originally posted this image on social media, calling it a national security meeting. But today, the president tried to downplay that meeting.
I don't remember much about that meeting. It was a very unimportant meeting, took place for a long time. Don't remember much about it.
Of course, the White House has also tried to downplay Papadopoulos and his role in the campaign, casting him off as a low-level volunteer. Then there's Carter Page, a former foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign. Fox News has learned Carter Page yesterday told the House Intelligence Committee that he let Jeff Sessions know about a trip he was taking to Russia. But Page said it was completely unrelated to his role in the campaign. Back in July, Jeff Sessions told the Senate Intelligence Committee that he didn't know whether Page had traveled to Russia. The big issue with both is what Sessions actually knew versus what he's been saying all year. One example during Sessions' confirmation hearing way back in January. Listen.
If there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it.
And then, just a couple of weeks ago, Senator Franken once again pressed the Attorney General over Trump surrogates and their communications with Russians.
Was that what you're saying, that you don't believe that surrogates from the Trump campaign had communications with the Russians? Is that what you're saying?
I did not, and I'm not aware of anyone else that did. And I don't believe it happened. But
and you don't believe it now?
I don't believe it happened.
I don't believe it happened. And now lawmakers want Sessions to clear this up. The Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge on Fox Top Story live in Washington. Catherine?
Shep, at that same Senate hearing in October, Attorney General Sessions was pressed by a senior Republican on the Russian contacts.
Did you ever overhear a conversation between you and anybody on the campaign who talked about meeting with the Russians?
I have not seen anything that would indicate a collusion with Russians to impact the campaign.
Senior Democrats, including Senators Leahy and Franken, put out statements today calling on Sessions to return to the Hill to the Senate Judiciary Committee to clarify his earlier testimony. At the very least, they say there appears to be inconsistencies and omissions. Senator Franken writing in a letter, quote, "Once again, developments in the ongoing investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election have brought to light evidence that you failed to tell the truth about your interactions with Russian operatives during the campaign, as well as your awareness of Russian contacts by other members of the Trump campaign team. It's a little more complicated than that in the sense that it was an exchange between Franken and Sessions that really got the ball rolling on this issue. Sessions has said he found Franken's question kind of long-winded and confusing, and it cited a news report that Sessions says he was unfamiliar with at the time, Shep.
Hey, Catherine, what else did Carter Page tell lawmakers?
Well, Carter Page has been telling Fox News since about March of this year that the Russia conference that he attended was unrelated to the campaign. And after he took questions behind closed doors on the Hill yesterday, Page said the real story here is the Trump dossier paid for by the DNC and the Clinton campaign.
It was terrific to have the opportunity to help clear the record as to the falsehoods from the dodgy dossier, which started this whole thing against me in the final 2 months before the election.
But here's the thing, there seems to even be a conflict over whether Sessions told the Senate Intelligence Committee privately that he didn't know about this meeting that Page had in Russia, when Page has now told the House lawmakers that the two men did discuss it, and at the time it did not set off any alarm bells, Shep.
Kat, we've gotten word of a trial date for the former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort and the former campaign aide Rick Gates. This is new in the last hour.
Well, that's right. In the last hour, Judge Amy Berman Jackson issuing an order with the trial date of May 7th. And that's important because it means the court action will run up against the campaigning for the midterm election. We were at Washington's district court yesterday when Manafort and his business partner Rick Gates waived their right to a speedy trial, suggesting sometime in the late spring. Manafort's lawyers say they plan to challenge the legal basis of the charges against him, including the validity of the search warrant for his Virginia home where so much evidence was gathered. Both men have pled not guilty, to the charges, and they're going to be back in court on Monday where they're going to take up this issue again of the home confinement, Shep.
Catherine Herridge in D.C., good to see you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's turn to Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace, who's also in Washington. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Shep, how are you?
Great, thanks. Lots of questions for Jeff Sessions. Where do you see this?
Well, I think you have to make a distinction between the Papadopoulos story and the story of Carter Page. When I say that, Papadopoulos is in one meeting. He says that, I've got some contacts. Should I use my contacts? Sessions says he shut it down. You can really understand where he might not have remembered that, and that somebody saying, I've got contacts I could use is different than the question he was asked about, do you know of any contacts that actually took place? The Carter Page one is more troubling simply because of the fact that you've got Carter Page saying that he told the House Intelligence Committee, one assumes under oath, that he specifically told Jeff Sessions he was going to Moscow. And then we have that video that we just played of Sessions saying that when asked specifically about Carter Page by the Senate Intelligence Committee, saying no, he never had heard anything about Carter Page going to Moscow. That seems like a direct contradiction. And again, all of this has to be seen, Shep, in the sense that, Sessions was a little bit of trouble already, a lot of trouble already, because he had misspoken or misled the Senate Judiciary Committee during his confirmation hearing when he said he had had no contact with the Russians. He then had to go back and clear that up and say, yeah, in fact, I met with the Russian ambassador, and recuse himself from the Russia investigation. So when he was specifically asked a question about Carter Page, if he didn't remember it, you would think that he would have gone back and searched his memory and immediately cleared up and corrected the record. He didn't do that. So I would think the Carter Page aspect of this is more troubling.
And is that another one of these come up to Capitol Hill and get grilled and grandstanding and all that kind of business, or what will you anticipate here?
Well, it depends, because it's the Democrats calling for it. The Republicans haven't. The Republicans control the committee. I also just wonder, as a political matter, if you're a Democrat, do you want Jeff Sessions to be forced out of office or to give the president an excuse to fire him? I mean, he's recused himself from the Russia investigation. What happens if you get a new attorney general who, and the Democrats can't blame the president because they're the one pushing him out, and then this new guy comes in and says, well, guess what? I'm not recused from Russia. So I think the Democrats might want to be careful what they ask for.
What do you make of the claims that Hillary Clinton hijacked the primary?
Well, I have to say it's very shocking, and it has a lot of credibility. I mean, here you have Donna Brazile, who after Debbie Wasserman Schultz was kicked out as the chair of the DNC. Now in her new book is saying, I then saw this agreement I was completely unaware of, and it basically gave Hillary Clinton large control over the Democratic National Committee before a contested primary with Bernie Sanders. You know, the Sanders camp was complaining all along that the DNC had its finger on the scale and was trying to help Clinton in terms of when they scheduled debates and how many debates and things like that. And here is the succeeding DNC chairwoman saying, guess what? It was true. And then, of course, you had Elizabeth Warren yesterday go on television and agree with Brazil that the primary was rigged. There's a real pushback, I can tell you, against Clinton and Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the Democrats. You know, the energy in the Democratic Party right now is in the left wing with Bernie Sanders, with Elizabeth Warren, and this only adds fuel to the fire of them saying we got robbed in the 2016 primaries.
Based on the accusations in the excerpts from the book that have come out, does this rise to the level of illegal, or if true, or where is it?
Well, you know, parties are generally given pretty broad control over how they run their primaries, how they run their affairs. The one question would be whether there were false filings to the Federal Election Commission in terms of if there was this financial arrangement, was all of that disclosed publicly? Now, I don't know whether that's a civil penalty or a criminal penalty or what, but I don't think it would be, you know, some conspiracy or something like that. It might be a false filing to the FEC. But let's be honest, the real impact of this is going to be political, not legal. And one of the really interesting things is Donna Brazile was a big supporter of Hillary Clinton. Remember, she's the one who gave the CNN question to the Clinton camp before she became an official in the DNC. And the fact that she is now trashing, throwing Hillary Clinton under the bus gives you an indication of that the Clintons' future in the Democratic Party may be behind them.
Politically speaking, what's your assessment of the state of the RNC and the DNC these days?
Well, I haven't thought about that.
The power just seems to have gone to the extremes, as you mentioned a minute ago. The power with Democrats is on the left, and the power with the Republicans is in this new populist something, and just the structures don't seem to have what they once did.
Well, I would say on the Republican side, I think that's very much in doubt. I think you're going to have a real battle for control of the Republican Party. It isn't so much the RNC, it's where the weight is going to be in the party. You've certainly got the Bannon wing that is going to try to get people like Roy Moore in Alabama and in other states, get insurgents to win, to be more Trump Republicans than conventional GOP Republicans, and very much to oppose people like Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader. But the Republican establishment is fighting back. They're planning to spend millions of dollars opposing the challengers, are going after Steve Bannon personally, ties to white nationalism. I think that's a battle that's going to be fought out throughout 2018 in all the primaries.
How was the sit down with Paul Ryan? That's one of Chris's guests tomorrow, Sunday.
He's my exclusive guest. We sat down with him. Oh, there we are, walking together.
Yes,
in case you mistake it, Ryan's the guy on the left. I know some people might think he was the guy on the right. Very interesting. He has some very interesting things to say about Hillary Clinton. He has some interesting news he makes about the tax bill and new things that might be added to it. You won't want to miss Fox News Sunday. I know you never do, Shep, but you won't want to miss it.
No, I do not. Great to see you, Chris.
Good to see you. How are the Ole Miss Rebels doing?
Chris, here's some salt. Here's a wound. You be nice.
Because we haven't talked about that much this year.
No, it's been busy. We're going to have quite a basketball season and a fantastic baseball season. I'm very excited about it.
Is that why you're actually working on Fridays this year? Because you're not going to the Ole Miss football games?
I don't work too many Fridays. I work as few as possible. After 22 years, you do get a little bit of vacation.
Okay. Well, I mean, but you take a lot of Fridays off. But this football season, you haven't so much.
I'd take 52 of them off if I could, but I can't, so I won't.
Okay.
I think these people back here would love it if we could all get a Friday off. Are you volunteering your team for Fridays? Yeah. Make you very popular here, Chris.
Well,
okay.
We might be able to work something out.
All right. Tell Mrs. Soup hello, and we're thinking of her.
I will indeed.
All right.
Thank you very much.
The Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, who deserted his post in Afghanistan, spent years in Taliban custody, is getting a dishonorable discharge. The military judge also busting Bergdahl down to private and ordering him to pay a price. but his punishment includes absolutely no prison time. The details of that coming up from the Fox News deck on this, well, it's Friday, Chris Wallace afternoon, maybe someday in the near future. I know you'd love that. No prison time on charges he put his comrades in danger by walking off his post in Afghanistan back in 2009. Here's Bergdahl leaving court earlier today. The judge also gave him a dishonorable discharge, reduced his rank from sergeant to private, and said he must forfeit pay for 10 months. Bergdahl had faced up to life in prison after pleading guilty to desertion and misbehaving before the enemy. After he left his base, the Taliban captured him and held him for 5 years. They freed him in 2014 in a prisoner exchange with the Obama administration. Prosecutors had recommended a prison sentence of 14 years. They cited the service members who were seriously hurt while searching for Bergdahl. But defense attorneys argued Bergdahl had already suffered enough during his time in captivity. Our chief correspondent, Jonathan Hunt, with more on this now. Jonathan?
Good afternoon, Shep. President Trump led the reaction to the decision to not give Bo Bergdahl any prison time. And his response, as so often, was blunt. Just 90 minutes after the sentence was announced, the president tweeted, quote, "The decision on Sergeant Bergdahl is a complete and total disgrace to our country and to our military." Bergdahl's lawyer had been critical of President Trump's comments prior to the trial, in particular when he called him a traitor, and the lawyer remained critical as the trial ended.
President Trump's unprincipled effort to stoke a lynch mob atmosphere while seeking our nation's highest office has cast a dark cloud over the case. Every American should be offended by his assault on the fair administration of justice and his disdain for basic constitutional rights.
The attorney also said Bergdahl was grateful to, quote, "everyone who searched for him in 2009. Several of those involved in the search suffered serious injuries, and for that reason alone, prosecutors had sought a stiff penalty." The judge did not explain how he arrived at his decision or how he balanced the time Bergdahl had spent in captivity against the suffering of those who took part in searching for him. Now, Bergdahl apparently plans to appeal against the dishonorable discharge, Shep, so he will actually continue to serve until that appeals process ends. His attorney says he's been through a terrible ordeal, and he's, quote, "glad it's over." Shep.
Jonathan Hunt, thank you. President Trump's headed to Asia, where analysts say North Korea will top the agenda, despite more fallout from the Russian investigation back in D.C. Details on the president's trip coming right up, and you are looking live. Houston's having a party today. No Nat sound, though. That's weird. Anyway, it's the Astros are champions of the world. What an amazing World Series, at least until Game 7, right? Hopefully Fox made billions off that. That's my hope. Houston has had 3 championship parades in the history of its city in professional sports. This is one of them. The right-through says they're 11 deep in some spots. Looks deeper than that to me. The city of Houston deserved to break. The city of Houston is the city of champions. President Trump says he's extending his marathon trip to Asia. He's adding an extra day in the Philippines. He says so he can attend the East Asia Summit with other world leaders. President Trump's 13-day trip is the longest by a U.S. president in more than 2 decades. The big issue on the agenda there, North Korea. Analysts say the president has a chance to shift the focus away from the growing controversy over the Russia investigation. The president making a quick stop in Hawaii before traveling to Japan. From there, he'll visit South Korea, China, Vietnam, and the Philippines. During a jam-packed overseas trip, the president is expected to urge other countries to ramp up the pressure on North Korea over its nuclear program. Just today, North Korea calling the United States imperialist warmongers and gangsta-like. This comes after U.S. officials told Fox News that 2 B-1 bombers flew with Japanese and South Korean fighter jets in a training mission near the Korean peninsula. North Korea's state news agency describing it as a surprise nuclear strike drill and accused the United States of trying to start a nuclear war. A South Korean official told the Associated Press the drill did not involve any live weapons. Jennifer Griffin's at the Pentagon this afternoon. Tell us some more information about North Korea's account of these drills and how incorrect it is.
Well, Shepard, the problem with North Korea's statement released by the state-run news agency is that the B-1B bombers are not nuclear capable, nor are they stealth. They carry the largest conventional payload in the U.S. Air Force arsenal, but they were not armed, as you mentioned. Another error in the North Korea statement is these B-1B Lancers did not actually fly over the Korean peninsula. They were off the east coast, according to the U.S. Air Force. They met up with Japanese and South Korean fighter planes to practice flying together. We can expect more show-of-force measures while the president is in Asia. What the reaction of North Korea shows is how easy it is for North Korea to misread U.S. intent, especially if they think these warplanes are nuclear capable, and they aren't. The American B-1B bombers took off from Guam last night. It was a pre-planned training mission, but it's no accident. It coincided with the president's trip to Asia. It certainly got Pyongyang's attention, Shep.
Speaking of that trip, what do we expect along the way here?
Well, South Korea's spy agency is now reporting that North Korea could be preparing for another missile test. For the first time in a decade, 3 U.S. aircraft carriers will be in Asia together and are expected to be off the coast of the Korean peninsula when the president visits South Korea. The president's national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, indicated yesterday the administration is now considering returning North Korea to the U.S. state sponsors of terror list. They were taken off that list, you remember, at the end of the Bush administration. He also said he didn't expect the president to alter the language he uses to describe the North Korean regime during the trip. Shep?
Jennifer, thank you. More now on the president's trip to Asia. Let's turn to A.B. Stoddard, associate editor and columnist at Real Clear Politics, and the host of No Labels Radio on SiriusXM's POTUS channel. Hello.
Hi, Shep.
What do you think of this trip? What are you expecting?
Well, the president doesn't like to be away from home. This is the longest trip, as you've been saying, in decades, and it is very long for President Trump, and it's a very sensitive trip. He has to strengthen his alliances, our alliances with the Japanese and the South Koreans, without provoking any tensions there. He has to handle some kind of negotiations, obviously, on North Korea with the Chinese, and he has to resist making declarations that he can't follow up on, like North Korea is going to face fire and fury if they continue to threaten us, the likes of which the world has never seen, because those words, even though North Korea continued to threaten us, didn't seem to hold much weight. So he has to be very careful in what he says on this trip, and he has to resist focusing on everything that's happening at home. Shep, you know that the tax reform debate is jumping all around on Capitol Hill. It is, the fighting there has really just begun. It's going to be a real test of the Republican Party, and President Trump has to remain focused on his trip in Asia and not be tweeting directions to the Republican Congress. And he has to stay focused off of Hillary Clinton and the Russia investigation, and stay focused on his job overseas.
Please, I'm just wondering if it's going to alter his tweeting schedule, because this morning we had all kinds of Hillary and a fresh dose of Pocahontas to kick this trip off. What is the strategy in punching down at Pocahontas?
Yeah. I think that he believes, and many people do, that Elizabeth Warren is sort of the leader of the Democratic Party and a likely challenger to him in 2020. So he likes to go after her, but really anything is a useful distraction these days. So obviously Mueller's targeting of Tony Podesta, this explosive revelation that Donna Brazile, the interim chair of the DNC, wrote in Politico yesterday, which is part of a book. She comes out and blames basically Hillary Clinton's campaign for sort of hijacking the DNC and controlling and rigging the outcome against Bernie Sanders in the primary. So these are all topics that really sort of rally the base and take focus off of the fact that we've just gotten through these 3 indictments, a guilty plea, Sessions, Attorney General Sessions, different accounts of what he knew or didn't know about Russian contacts with his campaign. So Trump is very, very focused on Russia, but really wants to keep the conversation on Hillary Clinton.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
See you soon, AB.
Thanks.
Unemployment, man, hit the lowest level in nearly 2 decades. The number of new jobs on the market coming up shorter than expected. The details and the outlook, that's next from the Fox News Desk.
Today's headlines. Cops at the University of North Carolina blaming a former student for a fire and explosion that hurt a professor.
Oh my God.
Happened at a campus at a historic tree. The professor told a local TV station he was trying to kick out the flames, but didn't realize there was an explosive device. Investigators say they brought the suspect to the hospital for a mental health evaluation. And a plane crash landing on a golf course pond. This happened in Vegas. Emergency officials say the pilot reported his engine failed and made a split-second decision to bring the plane down away from people and buildings. The pilot and passenger were able to walk away. And BMW recalling about 1 million cars in the U.S. because of problems that can cause them to catch fire. That's the word from the car company's spokesman, who says the recall includes several models from 06 to 11.
The Trump administration just released a federal government report by dozens of United States government scientists on climate change. They conclude climate change is real and driven almost exclusively by human activity. Climate change is happening mostly because of the fuels we burn for energy, fuels which emit greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. This was, even before today, a scientific fact. This new report is notable because the White House is said not to have tried to block it. The study found that rising temperatures will increase sea levels by at least several inches in the next 15 years, and that temperature rise will continue depending on how much carbon dioxide we put into the atmosphere. Some mixed news out of the latest jobs report. Unemployment falling to its lowest level in 17 years. The rate now 4.1%. That's full employment. But at the same time, the Labor Department reports employers added just 261,000 jobs last month. That's about 50,000 fewer than they had expected. Analysts say lots of those jobs could have been in the service industry. They say the hurricanes forced thousands of businesses, including restaurants and bars, to close. House lawmakers are set to make changes to the GOP's tax bill. The Republican chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Kevin Brady, says he's going to make a substantive amendment to improve the bill. Congressman Brady says the bill should be ready for a committee vote next Thursday. Some Republican lawmakers have already said they're against this bill unless some changes are made. Our chief congressional correspondent, Mike Emanuel, with the news. He's live up on Capitol Hill. What more do we know about this planned change?
Well, Shep, Chairman Kevin Brady says scrapping Obamacare's individual mandate as part of tax reform could be an adjustment.
The president feels very strongly about including this at some step before the final process, and he's told me that twice by phone and once in person.
Well, that would definitely add revenue to tax reform. There are some here on Capitol Hill who worry about mixing Obamacare with tax reform, making things much more complicated, Shep.
What about folks from high-tax states? Are they being heard?
Yeah, we're hearing that a lot of these lawmakers from places like New York, New Jersey are basically fighting for the status quo, trying to keep those state and local tax deductions.
I think we should continue the deductibility of state and local taxes. It's been in the tax code since 1913. And New Jersey, Harris, is a sending state. We send a lot more revenue to Washington than we receive back, and I don't want to exacerbate that situation.
Lance notes those deductions were on the chopping block back in the 1980s and survived. He hopes that's the case again, Shep.
Mike Emanuel on the Hill, thank you. President Trump today put pressure on the Justice Department to investigate his former political opponent, Hillary Clinton.
They should be looking at a lot of things, and a lot of people are disappointed in the Justice Department, including me.
Well, this comes after the former interim chair of the Democratic National Committee, Donna Brazile, wrote in her new book that the DNC favored Hillary Clinton in its presidential primaries. According to Donna Brazile, Clinton gave money to the DNC through joint fundraising, giving her an edge over the Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. In her book, Brazile called the deal unethical, but added that it's certainly not illegal. The current DNC chair, Tom Perez, reportedly sent out a note to its members saying that the joint fundraising agreement was the same for both the Clintons and Sanders campaigns. Kristen Fisher is live at the White House. Kristen?
Hey, Shep, well, what President Trump is saying is essentially that this is the real collusion. Forget about his campaign in Russia. He wants the FBI and the Justice Department to investigate the Clinton campaign's alleged collusion with the DNC as detailed in the former chairwoman's new book. She says if the fight had been fair, one campaign would not have control of the party before their voters had decided which one they wanted to lead. This was not a criminal act, but as I saw it, it compromised the party's integrity. Now, President Trump tweeted about this 8 times today before departing on his trip to Russia. He told to Asia. He told the Justice Department and the FBI that they must do what's quote unquote right and proper. But just before boarding Marine One, he acknowledged that, technically he knows that he's not supposed to get involved.
I don't know. I'm really not involved with the Justice Department. I'd like to let it run itself. But honestly, they should be looking at the Democrats.
So on the one hand, he's saying that he knows that he should allow the Justice Department investigations to remain independent from the executive branch. But Shep, in this case, he can't seem to help himself from steering the Justice Department and the FBI in this direction.
What are you hearing from Democrats, Kristen?
Well, Senator Dianne Feinstein is calling it deeply disturbing. She says that this shows President Trump's contempt for the rule of law. She says we can't allow ourselves to become numb to the president, calling on independent law enforcement to investigate his political opponents. And, this clip in particular is what has some Democrats so concerned. Watch.
The saddest thing is that because I'm the President of the United States, I am not supposed to be involved with the Justice Department. I'm not supposed to be involved with the FBI. I'm not supposed to be doing the kind of things that I would love to be doing. And I'm very frustrated by it.
So again, you have President Trump saying he knows he shouldn't get involved, but Shep, he continues to do so.
Kristen Fisher at the White House, thanks. President Trump responding after Twitter confirmed an outgoing employee intentionally deactivated his account. The president tweeted, "My Twitter account was taken down for 11 minutes by a rogue employee. I guess the word must be finally getting out and having an impact." That happened last night around 6:45 Eastern Time. If you search for the president's handle, you saw this page. Wow. By 7 p.m. Eastern, his account was back up and going, but the access this employee had to the president's account is raising security concerns. Twitter responded today, update, we have implemented safeguards to prevent this from happening again. We won't be able to share all details about our internal investigation or updates to our security measures, but we take this seriously and our teams are on it. Investigators say they're still trying to figure out if the Islamic State had any direct involvement in Tuesday's deadly terror attack here in New York City. Now ISIS militants are weighing in for the first time, saying the suspect is a soldier of the caliphate. A live report from Lower Manhattan with an update on this investigation next.